Hey, fifth graders, how's it going? All right, so this is going to be lesson 19. So we just have 2 lessons left. We're going to do both of them right here, but it both have to do with histograms. So a histogram is a bar graph that shows how often data occurs over intervals, basically. Lesson 19 is you are making the bar graphs, and it just gives you, here's a scatter shot of numbers, and you have to figure out like how many times do the numbers between this and this occur. So if we did it every 10, so like how many times do we have numbers between 60 and 69? How many times do we have the numbers that fall between 70 and 79? How many times between 80 and 89? That sort of thing. I would love to say that, this is not that big of a deal. It's super fun. It's super easy, but I kind of hate this lesson. Not because it's a bad lesson or anything like that. It's a perfectly fine lesson. It's just, I don't find it very interesting. It's a lot of like tally marks and just sort of like counting how many times numbers occur, and it's just not my thing. It's a statistics kind of a thing, and statistics isn't my favorite subject in math, but to each their own. Fortunately, lesson 20, they give you the bar graphs. You don't have to draw them at all. They give it to you, and you just have to kind of like use that to answer questions, which is much more fun and much easier. Mostly because it does not involve a whole lot of like searching for numbers. In particular, on the homework, number 4 through 6 is just, it's a beast. If you flip to that page, which is GRP 19, you can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 30 numbers that you have to deal with. I would love to say that it's not that big of a deal, but it's kind of a pain. It just, what can you do? Fortunately, I'm sure that all of you are like, Mr. Lewin, it's okay. We totally get it because, you have taught 18 lessons of math that were just the most fun things that we've been allowed to do all year. And, fortunately, because of this global pandemic, we now have these videos that we can watch again and again so that we can relive the pleasure of getting ready for 6th grade math forever. And, we will show our children and our grandchildren these videos. And, it's okay to have one video that is maybe just not as much fun. I'm sure you're all thinking that totally, right? Yeah. So, all right, let's just go ahead and we'll take a look at the activity there, unlocking the problem. So it's on that first page. So first of all, they give you the ages and the tallies, right? So you've got from 10 to 19, from 20 to 29, from 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59. A lot of times you make intervals as 10s just because it's kind of easy to see. The one time that I would maybe say your intervals are going to be kind of weird, like these, they start at like 10, right? Like 9, and then 10 feels like the next set of numbers because it's 2 digits. And then 20 feels like the next set because all those numbers have a 2, right? So it kind of feels like 20 is part of the grouping. There's going to be a question, and it's actually not until the next lesson. But basically, they're going to ask you like, what should the intervals be? Or maybe it's on the test or something. I don't see it. It doesn't matter. But it's going to be, here's a whole bunch of test scores, and use this interval. And one of the test scores is 100. So you're going to have to choose. Do you want to have it go 91 to 100, and which means that it'd be 81 to 90, that sort of thing, or do you want to have 100 as its lone self, just as kind of an outlier? Doesn't really matter, but it just kind of depends on how you want to do your histogram and how you want your intervals to be. So yeah, they kind of show you the tallies, right? So they give you the tallies. Really, what they're trying to encourage you to do is basically like as you're going through the numbers. So let's say we were doing 10 through 19, right? So let's do it down here, 10 through 19. Okay, and I know they already gave this to you, but I'm just gonna pretend like they haven't. So what they want you to do is just kind of look through the numbers and go, okay, I don't see one, I don't see one, I don't see one. Oh, 19, okay, so that's one. and then, oh, 18, that's 1, and 17, that's 1. And then you go through the rest of them, and you're like, okay, there were no 1. So there's a total of 3, all right? That's sort of what they're encouraging you to do. I found myself just going through and just counting them, like I kind of crossed them out as I went through them, but I would just count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, there's 7. I wasn't really doing the tally mark thing. It's up to you what you feel most comfortable with. If doing the tallies makes the most sense to you, then that's fine. So then we're going to draw a graph, and this is where it gets kind of, can be a little bit obnoxious. On this one, actually, on some of them, they're going to give you the graph at least partly drawn out. For others, they're just going to tell you to draw one, and you're just going to have to make it. So for this one, they kind of give you something that looks like this, and it says 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay. And then going across the bottom, you're going to have 10 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, and 50 to 59. Ooh, that's getting a long ways away. That's a 9. This is also a lesson that it might be handy to have well, 1, probably graph paper, but 2, it might be handy to have colored pencils with you just to kind of help you see the difference between them. So then all you do is you make bars that go up however many the thing is supposed to be. So for the first one, 10 to 19, there was 3 people that fell into that group. And so that's your first bar. For 20 to 29, there was 10 people, so you would go all the way up to 10 and then over. And we'll do this one with lines going this way, so it's a little bit different. It's kind of silly because I totally have other colors, but that's okay. 30 to 39 was 5, so we're going to go between 4 and 6 and make that one. Okay. And 40 to 49 is, there's 6 of them, so it's going to be just a little taller than this one. In terms of things that we're going to do together, we kind of already did them. Let's see. Yeah, sorry, I just don't have a lot of enthusiasm for this lesson. Let's look at 4 through 6, just because I hate it. And so if I hate it, then that means that you'll probably hate it. And so if I can help alleviate some of your pain, then I should do that. Okay. So they give you a whole series of numbers. Those are the numbers of minutes that each student in Mr. Green's class spent on homework last night is given below. My suspicion is that this is not the number of minutes that Mr. Lewin's class has spent on homework on a given night since spring break, basically, because I have a feeling that a lot of you have not done very much. A couple of you have done quite a bit, but some of you maybe have been relaxing a little bit. Hopefully it'll work out for you next year. We'll see what happens. Anyway, so first of all, so number 4, they say starting at 30 and use 10-minute intervals for the data, list the intervals. All right, so we're going to start at 30 and we're going to go up to 39. Now, you might be tempted to say, no, Mr. Lewin, that's not 10, it should be to 40. But if you think about it, 30 counts, so that's actually 1. Then you have 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39. So 39, 30 to 39 is a 10, is an interval of 10, okay? So you're gonna have 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, and we have some in the 60s, so we go 60 to 69. And then if you look at those numbers, there are none that fall in the 70s, so you don't have to worry about that. So that's number 4. Number 5 says make a frequency table for the data. So again, I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write the frequency below each of these, essentially. But if you counted them up, and I would encourage you to make your own graph for this and kind of figure out how to do it. But basically, there are 6 of these. There's 5 here, 4 here, and 2 of those. All right. So that's the frequency. So that's the number of numbers that fall into this category. This is the number of these that fall into this category, that sort of thing. Okay. One question that comes up in a later lesson, actually comes up in lesson 20, is, I guess that's the only lesson left, so it has to be that lesson, right? One of the questions that's going to come up is going to ask you, could you tell, like, obviously here you have the information, but if I just gave you the graph that showed, hey, 30 to 39, that goes up to 6, 40 to 49, that goes to 5, that sort of thing, could you figure out how much, like what the true number is if you added everything up? And you can't unless you have the actual data to begin with. So if you're creating the histogram, obviously you have the data and you can tell what the real numbers are. But if you aren't creating the histogram, then you can't necessarily tell like what it would be. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. So I'm not going to draw the bar graph for you. You guys can do that. Yeah, so, all right, that's that one. On the homework, they give you basically, well, it's really only one time where they make you draw the graph, so it's not that bad. Number 6, they make you draw one on the homework. But I guess number 3, they have you complete it, but it's already basically, halfway done. So, all right. So that's lesson 19. Let's talk lesson 20, which is much prettier. So lesson 20 is just using histograms to analyze. You're analyzing histograms. So they're going to give you the histogram, and you're just going to tell them, hey, this is the information that I see. So I'm actually just going to jump right into the lesson stuff. First of all, sorry, my throat's starting to hurt from talking so much. I've done all these lessons. There are 2 typos that I noticed. So on that first page, if you're doing the unlock the problem, towards the bottom there, it says add the frequencies. So you've got 2, I don't know, like a little key, I guess, and it says how many of the items sold cost $16 to $25. You kind of go down and it says add the frequencies. It says 7 plus blank plus blank. That second plus sign should not be a plus sign, it should be an equal sign. Because what they're asking you is to add 7 plus, in this case, 2 is equal to 9. So 9 of the items are between that and that. So when you're being asked these questions, one of the things you have to be really careful of is knowing what exactly they're asking for. Sometimes they're asking you, hey, what falls into one category, right? So if you have, something that goes from 16 to 20, right? And they say, how many items fell in the category of 16 to 20? Then you could say, well, it's this number. But if they have a situation where they say, how many fall into like 16 or above? Well, that means it's the 16 to 20 category, but if there's another category, like say 21 to 25, right, that would also be above 16. And if there's one that goes from 26 to 30, that also is above 16. So all of those count, and you have to add all of those up and say all of these, this is the total amount that is above 16 or 16 and above. So just watch out for that. In the case of this, it'll only ever give you 2 categories that you have to add up, just so you know. So on number 1 has the same typo there at the very bottom where it says add the frequencies. It should be blank plus blank equals, not plus again, blank. And I'll let you guys kind of figure that out. So, well, no, okay, let's do number 1. That's I guess as good a place to start as any. So this is number 1. So the histogram shows the number of days in 1 month whose temperatures were within each temperature range, which is 55 to 59, 60 to 64, 65 to 69, 70 to 74, 75 to 79. List the bars that represent, or how many days was the temperature above 70 degrees? So that's the question. How many days were above 70 degrees? How many days were at or above 70 degrees? That's an important difference. So list the bars that represent the temperatures at or above 70 degrees. So if you go in there, well, at 70 degrees is 70, right? And that interval is the 70 to 74. That's that bar. But then also 75 to 79 is also a category that falls at or above 70 degrees. So these 2 are your answers there, okay? Now for 70 to 74, how many, basically how many days are there? Well, there was 10. And for 75 to 79, there was 3. Okay, so then it says add the frequencies. Well, this is 10 plus 3, and then this is where it should be an equal sign, 13. So the daily temperature was at or above 70 degrees on 13 days. All right. Yeah, the other ones are a little bit easier. Though number 3 is kind of the same thing, only going in reverse. It says how many are below 65 degrees. So that means that everything that falls below 65, which would be 64 on down, those all count towards that same category. It's kind of going back to the inequalities where you had like the greater than or equal to or less than or equal to kind of a thing. It's that sort of deal. Let's see. All right, let's look at number 6, because that's kind of a different problem. So number 6, so for 6 through 7, use the histogram to the right. So they're talking about ages of voters in an election, okay? So you've got the number of voters, and then you have their ages on the bottom, and their ages range between 21 and 80 years old. So it says how many people voted in the election? Well, what you have to do here is you actually have to figure out, okay, in each age category, so each bar, how many people fell into that group? And you can tell by just looking at what number they line up with, right? So the 21 to 30, there was 30 people in that group. The 31 to 40, there was 45 people in that group. 41 to 50 was 65 people. 51 to 60 is 50 people. Oops, not a comma. And the next group, there's 55 that are between 61 and 70. And then there was 40 in that last group. Oh, not a comma, a plus. All right. So if you add all those numbers up, that will tell you how many people voted in the election. So yeah, I guess mostly I'm not going to do the adding for you. I've already told you that you can use calculators in an earlier video. That still applies here. You can totally use a calculator for this, or you can work it out yourself. But the point is that when they ask you, like, how many total people did this, well, you have to count up, okay, each bar represents this many people or this many things. So add up what the values of each bar are, and that will give you your answer. Okay. We're going to talk number 7 on the homework. So I don't do this very frequently, but let's talk about what this question is. So it, again, for 5 through 7, use the histogram on the right. So it's talent show ticket sales. Okay, so they've got the number of tickets sold and then how many students sold that many tickets, right? So for 0 through 9, so kids who sold between 0 and 9 tickets, there was, that looks like 15. Yeah, so it's kind of a little hard to tell, but that's right in between 14 and 16, so it's 15. For 10 through 19, there's about 20, or there's 20 kids who sold that many, et cetera, et cetera. Now, number 7 asks, can you tell from the histogram how many tickets were sold in all? Explain. So if you look at that histogram, can you tell how many tickets were sold? Well, the answer is no, you can't. Because you can tell how many students sold tickets. That one you can figure out really easily. But you can't tell how many tickets they sold, because if you think about it, that 0 through 9 group, right? There was 15 people who sold tickets, who sold between 0 and 9 tickets. Well, if all 15 of them sold 0 tickets, then that group is worth nothing. But on the flip side, if all 15 of them sold 9 tickets, then that bar is worth 135 tickets. So that's a big change, right? Same thing with all the others. You don't know if they sold the least amount to fall into that category or the most to fall into that category, or somewhere in between, or a mix, who knows? So the answer is no, you cannot tell how many tickets were sold. What you could do, technically, is you could figure out the range if you wanted to figure out, for each bar, if everybody in that group sold the least number of tickets, this is how many total tickets they would sell. And if everybody sold the most tickets for that group, this is how many tickets could have been sold. and then your answer is somewhere between that and that, I actually worked it out. It's between 1,200 tickets and 1,839 tickets are your possibilities. Your answer falls somewhere in there, but you have no idea where. It's not possible to tell. So the short answer is no, because you don't know how many people or what people sold, how many tickets they sold specifically. You only know like the range of tickets that they sold. So that gets you through lesson 20, and then you just have the check understanding. And after that, you have the last test, and then you're done. That was it for math. So if you got this far, whether it be May, which I don't think any of you are going to be this far in May from what I know of where you're at, or if it is a case of, you're getting here in June or July because your parents are making you do math over the summer. Either way, congratulations. You have gotten through not only the 5th grade math course, but you have also done the getting ready for 6th grade. And I wish you good luck in 6th grade math. I think that you guys all have a lot of talent and you can do very well as long as you make sure that you work hard, do your homework, and also ask questions if you need help. Super important things that you need to know how to do. But anyway, good luck in middle school. I love all of you and I wish you the best. Talk to you later.